The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
A very scary experience.
You know, God is a solution. God, the 12 step.
I like where he's going here.
Helps the community grow, helps us grow.
Monty has done a phenomenal job. And you're talking about taking people through a spiritual process, getting them into recovery.
Thanks, Monty, and thanks for all your support.
We need spirituality to make this thing work long term.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
And now, broadcasting on location somewhere in the vast expanse of the Pacific Northwest, it's the over-opinionated 12-stepologist, the Monty'man.
Greetings, one and all, and welcome to a unique broadcast, because on the show today, we're doing part 2 of 2 recovery podcasters share on steps 4 and 5. We're going to be talking about steps 5, but not on my show, on Dion Miller's show, Raw Recovery. So I have pulled the audio piece from his show to be able to put on in our files for you that may not tune into his show. But I want you to know about his show. Raw Recovery is really an excellent podcast that gives people a safe place to share their stories of experience, strength, and hope that might not otherwise have the opportunity to do that. And Dion is giving them the opportunity to bring their stories to light so you guys can benefit from them. And Dion and I had decided that we would do part 1 on my show, step 4, and then part 2, step 5, on his show. Now, to listen to several of his podcasts, visit his website at trudgingtogether.com and click on the podcast link. And this broadcast, as well as others, will be on his page. All right, without further ado, here is part 2 of 2 recovery podcasters discussing steps 4 and 5. This is step 5 with myself and Dion Miller on Raw Recovery.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. My name is Dion Miller, and I am going to be your host today. Oh, gosh, I was so excited to do a podcast today. There's nothing like starting out the week in just enveloped in recovery. And today on our show, I have Monty'man from Take 12 Radio. Monty, welcome to Trudging Together.
Hey, buddy. It is really, really cool to be here on your show. What a treat. You know, we're all on the same side here with these recovery podcasts, and you're doing the deal, and I so appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. You know, and it's different variations, too. You know, I had a great time. You know, it was nice going on a podcast and not having to do back-end work. Honestly, that was nice.
I hear
you get to kind of relax today, and I get to do the work, and you know, and that's kind of why we did this. I wanted to split it up so that people could get, you know, the more experiences, the more voices we have, the better off we are.
Yeah, I totally agree. Good deal. So last week we did part 1 of this.
Yeah,
and this week we're doing part 2. So last week, what did we do? We did step 4, right?
Yeah, we did on step 4. Before we get going, I'd like to do a quick disclaimer.
Yeah.
Monty and I do not speak for any group, any 12-step group. We may be members of a 12-step group, but we will be sharing our experience, strength, and hope together here today. So that's what it will be based on. But yeah, the 4th step, we had a great talk on it, you know, pen to paper. and how that was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And writing that down. We got into causes and conditions in the 4-step, and why that was so important. And then we had another person on, Scott James. I'm horrible with names.
No, Roger.
I was so off.
Yeah, Roger McDermott. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the same name as my stepdad, so that's why I started naming off my brothers.
Yeah, Roger has he is a Take 12 Recovery Radio contributor, and he's one of our sponsors, and he's a 12-stepper too. The guy's been around forever. Just a good brother, and he
We've been talking all week, and he's just he's a real fun guy. Sends me inspirational stuff every day. I'm really enjoying it.
He knows a ton of people in Southern California. I mean, he knows. In fact, he's talking to a buddy of his who was the founder of the Black Panther Party out of Oakland, California. Who is now a man of God and serving his community, and he says, Monty, we're going to get this guy on your show, and I'm like, wow. I mean, Roger, how do you know these people? He just keeps coming up with these people, but hey, it's the recovery community, man.
Yeah, we've all. That's what's neat about recovery is we all have our parts. Roger knows the people. I'm good at talking. So, we all have our different parts in recovery. And once we decide that we can do this together, those parts come together, and they always fit because it's God's will. So they always fit very beautifully. So step five, why is step 5 so important? And of course, I have lost anything that I thought I was going to talk on, but I always have a backup. I want to start with a reading, and it's into action, just the first paragraph. Having had made a personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our paths. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We have put our finger on the weak items in the personal inventory. Now, these are to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which, when completed, will mean we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. So we've got a couple of things that we're looking at. We've completed our inventory, and now it's time to sit down and do the talk.
Yeah, amen.
And how did you do your 5th step? Did you do your 5th step with your sponsor?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a no, actually.
Yes and no.
yeah. So, so I love the fact that you read this opening paragraph, because it's talking about step 3 and step 4 here. We have a new relationship with our Creator. That's step 3, and then discovering the obstacles on our path is step 4. And so I was a graphic artist by trade for a long time, had a sign business and everything, and I thought I was all that, right? Yeah. When I first got into recovery, so I had a great sponsor, and I took my 5th step, and I made this binder. I mean, it was so impressive, dude. I mean, I had graphics and flow charts and everything else, and I took it to him, and I said, I'm ready to do this thing. And he looked at me and he goes, I don't even want to hear it. And I'm what? And he goes, you're so full of yourself. He said, this is all about becoming humble. That's why you're admitting to God, to yourself, and another human being. It's a practice in humility. He goes, I don't want to hear it. He was really irritated with me. And so I called him up a few days later. I said, hey, Doug, I said, ready to do the 5th step? Because I told you I'm not doing it with you. Yeah. I was like, what? And so, but he told me, he says, but you better find somebody to do it with right away. Yeah. And so I went over to this guy's house, who, now this is just so weird. He was actively drinking. He was in the program,
Okay.
But he had kind of, he had jumped off the wagon, and he was actively drinking.
Okay.
But he was an amazing guy, and I sat down with the guy, and I said, man, I got to do my fifth step with somebody. And he wasn't drunk or any of that, but he was still in his cups,
Sure.
And I did my fifth step with him without the binder, right? But I did it with him. Now, that's kind of unusual. Some people say, well, it doesn't have to be your sponsor. It could be a priest or rabbi or your spiritual advisor or whatever. It was another drunk man that wasn't even practicing the principles at the time. Isn't that wild?
It is wild, but at the same time, it's still the action that's taken.
Yes.
It's all about the action. And, I'm sure a lot of people, oh, that's just wrong. No, it's not wrong at all. It's exactly what you were supposed to do. I mean, in a sense, it's like God guided you there. Because the other guy was like, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and actually what came of it is the other guy ended up getting back into the meetings, getting back into working with other people and doing his thing. And then he's rocking it today,
Look at that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, God had a plan there.
Absolutely.
And it was for everybody.
Yep.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
I do have a fifth step experience. Actually, it was on my fourth step. And my sponsor was he's one of the big book thumpers. I'm a big book thumper. But he's always very much about the book. And I had a slip during my fourth step. And what he did is he said, okay, you had a slip. You drank because you're an alcoholic. You didn't make a big deal of it. We redid steps 1, 2, and 3, made sure 3 was good and solid again.
Mm-hmm.
And then I continued on with my fourth step. Like we didn't even skip a beat. And I really appreciated that because he said, Dion, you drank because you're an alcoholic. That doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean you lost steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. It just means we need to go back and make sure they're solid before we move forward again.
Yeah. This is when I spoke at the Celebrate Recovery meeting last week. Prior to that, they do this thing as, when they do the chips, is anybody starting over tonight? And there was a number of folks that came up and got their 24-hour, and a couple of them were like, yeah, I lost this time. And so when I got up to speak, before I started my spiel, I said, I just want to say, look, you may have lost a calendar date, but you did not lose that experience.
Correct.
You did not lose that time. And I just want to tell you, let your heart not be troubled. You did not lose that time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't give people a hard time about slips. The fact that they came back is fantastic.
Yeah, and is it okay? No, it's not okay. But what are we going to do? We going to belabor the point and beat them up? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We've been beat up enough, right?
Yeah, we do it enough. And I think the big part here, a lot of people say, well, if God already knows why and knows my character defects, then why do I need to admit it to him if he already knows this, right?
Yeah, what's your take on that? Why you have to admit it to God if he already knows?
I think that comes back to being humble.
There it is,
and having some humility, and it's even more powerful. I feel when I pray, if I talk out loud, even if I'm alone.
Yeah,
it becomes different. It feels like an actual conversation. So when I'm admitting it out loud, when I actually do that, there's a part of my brain that actually connects to it too, because now I'm taking responsibility for that action.
Yeah.
And I need to use my mouth to do that. Pen to paper and run in your mouth. 2 of the most powerful healing things that we have in the program.
I agree. And I think the other thing it speaks to is it's part of developing an intimate relationship with the divine, right?
Absolutely.
Can you imagine? Are you a dad? Do you have children?
I do. I've
Okay.
got 4.
Okay. So can you imagine if they only talked to you on Sunday morning?
Yeah.
you know,
Wouldn't feel too good.
no, wouldn't feel too good. And so I think God misses his time with us because we put so much ahead of him. But when it comes to our recovery, we're if we're doing it in the way that the 12-step program or directions suggest that we do it, then we're entirely dependent on his power, because our problem is we're powerless, right? So
Correct.
why wouldn't we talk out loud to him? And like you said, it's a matter of humility. Am I humble enough to admit it to God? He knows, but it's a matter of humility. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's like, maybe I know, we can use the kids thing again. Maybe I know that my son is in trouble because of something that he did.
right.
But I can't really help until he comes to me and says, Dad, this is what's going on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And it's the same kind of thing. And even from what I read, it goes on to say that our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And that's what we're trying to do. And you can't do that without humility. So
yeah, it's interesting because when I was education coordinator for the Adult and Teen Challenge program here in our area, one of the things I would ask the guys in there that were in the program, I said, "Why are you here?" Well, you get a number of answers. Most of them were surrounded around. Well, I need to get the little woman off my back, or I'm here because I need to get the courts off my back, or bottom line was most of them were there because they wanted the pain to stop. They wanted the consequences to change, right? So I would tell them, I said, what if I told you that, okay, I get it. Those are all, I guess, legitimate reasons in your perception, but what if I told you that the real reason that you're here is to learn how to become of maximum service to God and the people he puts in your life? What would you say to that? And they're like, what? I mean, what?
Huh?
Well, God? What?
Maximum service.
Yeah. So
people.
you're absolutely right. That's what it does. And I think when we make this connection with our Creator, it's like turning the switch on,
Yeah.
I mean, this guy knows everything about me anyway.
Exactly.
Why not be transparent with such a loving entity,
Yeah, and come to an agreement on that yes, I do have certain faults, but now that I'm aware of them, I can have a different reaction to them. So, I mean, even in therapy and CBT, it's about awareness first. And awareness in what we do is also acceptance. And, from the moment that we get into the program, we're being taught to let go and let God. We go home and pray. Use the serenity prayer. Put your shoes under the bed so that you get on your knees. Things like this to remind us to do certain things.
Yeah.
And the 5th step is very, very important because it shows you all the different types of manipulation, fear, and the 100 forms of self that we were utilizing for other people. I also think emotional sobriety is a big part of this, where we start to discover that we are abusing other people to make us happy.
Yeah, that is so true. I was so emotional. Jeez, I had no idea. I was so emotionally dependent on other people's behavior to be comfortable in my own skin. It was. I look back at it now and I'm like, wow, no wonder I people ran from me.
Yeah.
You're going to be my best friend, or I'm going to, you're never going to live it down. I'm coming after you, man.
That's right.
I'm planning. We're planning to go to the beach this weekend. You better show up. If you're really my friend, you better not change those plans, you jerk. And then I go out looking for him. Where were you? You were supposed to go to the beach with me. Well, we never actually cemented that. Well, no, but I did.
In my head, I did, and that's what matters.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I found that when I got into the program, that 90% of my problems just did not exist. They just weren't there. I made them up because, I tried to determine my own worth. I tried to determine everybody else's worth. I tried to make everything perfect. And now everything's perfect just the way it is. Right?
Yeah.
Because now because the fifth step really is about taking responsibility for your actions, for everything that we've done. That's what it's about.
There's a part, if I may, there's this one little sentence in here where it's on page 73 in the third edition. It says they, and that's the new prospect, the new guy.
Yeah.
They took inventory all right, so they did their fourth step, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egotism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves. I don't know about you, but maybe you've experienced this in working with people at their first attempt at this thing, right? They think they're doing a deep dive, but they're only actually scratching the surface. And I mean, I was like that. I mean, when I was doing my 4-step, right? I mean, I had the but habit, well, you don't understand that guy,
I wasn't mad at him.
Right. I mean, but he was wrong, right?
Yeah. I still need you to agree with me on this, right?
But it's so funny because I busted up laughing because later on that page, it talks about psychologists, and doctors, they're kind of fed up with us because we don't tell the whole truth.
Yeah.
Right. We pay the medical profession millions of dollars every year.
Yeah.
And we lie to them.
Yeah.
We lie to them.
We don't even give them a fair chance. No, we don't.
No, it's like, well, are you still tobacco free? Oh yeah, yes.
You just had one before you came in.
Do you use alcohol or cannabis? I mean, they always ask that now, especially if they're a new doctor. Nope. How's you going to the doctor for obesity problems? So, right, staying away from the carbs. Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Liar.
So why isn't it working?
Liar. So the confession thing is so important, right?
It is. Well, it separates the truth from the bullshit crap.
Yeah, it does.
And the fifth step is where all that dies, I would say, where the old me passes on and the new me is reborn. Because now I'm going to be taking life. I'm going to be looking at life differently now.
Right.
Because I'm alleviated of the pain and the suffering of last week. And when that happens, I become free. And then I have less block. For me, it's all about getting closer to God every time. Whenever I remove a character defect, whenever I do something that stands in my way, is because I am getting closer to God.
Yeah, because
his step does that.
Because we're engaging him, and he's the one doing a lot of what we can't do for ourselves. What an awesome gift, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's this is about the time when we say stick around, wait for the miracle to happen, because your obsession is going to probably be leaving very shortly if it hasn't already left yet.
Sure.
And that has to do with God.
So what about the next part of it, to ourselves? Did you find it hard to admit to yourself the depth of your, stuff?
Not, I've been in therapy since I was 12. So it was a natural process for me.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I've been in therapy since I was 12. My parents put me away when I was 14. I was in a psych ward for a while. So I've been learning meditation and how to take stock and inventory of yourself since I was a teenager.
Right.
So I didn't fear it. I actually welcomed it because I knew what was going to happen, and I wanted it. I wanted the sober Dion back. I wanted the recovery Dion back because I knew him, and my wife kept telling me that too. She was my girlfriend when I was sober the first time. I had 12 years, and she would tell me, Dion, I know the sober Dion, and I'm going to wait for him. And it actually helped me. It made me try.
Yeah. I've been thinking as of late about this part of this, admitting to myself, and boy, it's frustrating. We have this. I want to be careful here because the jury's still out with me on this whole MAT thing, medically assisted treatment.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not gonna poo-poo it. I'm not gonna. I just don't know enough about it to really.
That's exactly. Yeah, I don't know enough about it.
But what I have watched though is people being able to admit to themselves the degree of their stuff. It's difficult. I mean, I know a guy right now. He's claiming sobriety chips in AA, but he's still ingesting cannabis. And I'm like, okay. I mean, by the letter of the law, if you're going to go by the letter of the law,
Sure.
The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. So if you're still smoking weed, you really aren't violating any membership agreement by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of the law.
That's a little different.
You're kind of, you're compromising, right? And are you really being honest with yourself? Are you really? And I asked him the other day, I said, so is there a medical reason you're doing? No. Other than it helps me with my stress. And I said, do you realize that the studies that are out now show that cannabis actually causes stress?
Yeah, it exacerbates it.
And he goes, yeah, I know that. I go, okay, so you know that, but you're still justifying. So I don't think you have a problem with cannabis. I think you have a problem with being honest with yourself.
There you go.
Because the cannabis is just a symptom, right?
Yeah, just like the alcohol.
Just like the alcohol. So this admitting to myself thing for some people can be tough because we still.
And that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought it up because when I first had my first anxiety attack, I went to therapy. I started going to therapy. Is the only time I'd leave the house.
Yeah,
therapy because I knew it would help me. And my therapist and my wife brought up the fact that I might have PTSD, and I denied it for months. For months. I knew it, but I didn't want to admit it because it was just another thing wrong with Dion. And I was so tired of being labeled and, oh, great, now I have 6% of what only, I'm tired of being singled out and, but I had to admit it, man. So that I could do something about it.
Sure.
So that I could do something. So yeah, we all have our things that we might cling on to because of our pride, our ego, or maybe just fear.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. My buddy Chris S. and I were talking the other day about when people say, like the statement I made about, well, I was asking the guy, is your doctor prescribing this? Is there some medical reason why you're doing it? No. Well, Monty, you're not a doctor. We say that a lot in meetings, right? Well, we're not doctors. And Chris brought up the point. He says, you know what? It's funny about that. Most of us know more about alcoholism and drug addiction than medical doctors. They get 5 hours of education, entire medical career.
And they go to one meeting.
Right. We know more than they do. We are way more qualified oftentimes.
That's just like Discovery Magazine put out that article a few weeks ago about comparing AA and CBT.
Oh, and right. AA you talked about CBT. That. Yeah. It really is because what is it? It's all about changing the way we think.
Yeah, muscle memory. It's all about muscle memory.
And it's interesting because when we change the way we think, we change the way we drink, right? So when we change the way we think, our actual DNA in our brain actually changes slightly. It does. Yeah. It's amazing, right? You know, these guys, the founders and the people in the first 100, they were so far ahead of their time, Dion.
They were.
They knew so much. They didn't realize how much they knew.
God graced. I really believe that God graced certain people so that we could all have AA today. Absolutely. Yeah. I believe that. I believe that nothing happens in God's world by mistake, and which is fantastic because then I get to be a part of it and I get to make a difference in it. So I have great respect for not just our founders, but for the Oxford group and anybody that came before them to try and help any alcoholic to get us to where we are.
Yeah, so. It's a beautiful thing. What about that part about another human being, admitting to another human being? Was that easy for you?
Well, there again, therapy. So I'm used to talking to people.
Right.
It was only tough in the sense of trying to figure out what the right thing was. That was the hard part for me. My biological father was on my fourth and fifth step, and I had never met the man. At this point, I had never talked to him either. This was 8 years ago, 8-9 years ago. And he's passed since then. And my sponsor, he's like, well, he's probably married. He has other children. And we have to think of these things. Obviously I'm talking 9th step now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But, we went through that process of, well, I didn't like him because he wasn't around. He owes me more money.
Yeah.
He was in jail for guns and he's an alcoholic. When I met him, he had 50 years of sobriety.
Wow.
So guess what? I was wrong.
Yeah.
Granted, he was on his last days and he told me he's like, yeah, I know you're my son, but I don't want to meet you. And that's part of what we go through. But here's the thing. No regrets.
Yeah.
I have no regrets.
Yeah.
And God gave me that because I opened my mouth on my 5th step.
Yeah. And there's so much
gave me that gift.
There's so much power in that. I'm not a prosperity guy or name it and claim it and blab it and grab it guy, but I think there's some truth to, if we're created in the image of our Creator, and he spoke the world into existence, I think we can speak our world into existence to some degree, right? When the stuff coming out of our mouth is just garbage and it's negativity and I'm just a piece of garbage and I'm never gonna I can never do this, and you're probably right. When people tell me they're working their program, I believe them.
Yeah, I believe them.
You know what I mean? But I think the other part's true. When we speak forth the stuff that's been ailing us, we release it, right?
Yeah. And absolutely, it matters. It really matters what we say to ourselves.
Yeah.
I used to call myself, an a-hole for a long time. I was President A-hole. One day, I'm like, you know what? I'm so tired of calling myself names. I'm done. And I quit being it because I wasn't calling myself. If you wake up in the morning, you're like, I'm mad. Guess what? You're going to be mad. You're creating.
Yeah, you've already predestined yourself
world.
To that.
Yeah. You've already decided what this day is going to be. And our attitude in recovery is imperative. Right? We only get a daily reprieve. That's the gift that we get every single morning is another daily reprieve. And we've got to work with that reprieve. I've got to have some success today. Yeah. Today, my success is doing this with you.
I think a lot of the freedom and a lot of the healing begins, I think, confession one to another
It's time tried. We all know it works.
And every major spiritual faith belief system, touches on that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Eastern philosophy, Christianity. I mean, they talk a lot about confession and bringing somebody in your circle of trust, so to speak. So because secrets kill. And it's funny, Dion, because you and I and other people that are doing this recovery podcast thing, most of us. Thousands of people know stuff about us we wouldn't have told our dog.
And now we're on here going, there was this one time I went to band camp.
Yeah, one time in band camp. That should have been in the big book.
Yeah. I'm just no longer ashamed of my past.
And it's out there.
I was what I was, but I am what I am now, and I love who I am today. I wouldn't change anything.
Our past does not have to define us.
That's correct. It's not who I am.
I'm not even defined by my alcoholism. I have a medical.
No way.
I have a medical condition. I'm allergic to it, but I'm not defined by it anymore.
Exactly. Where it used to be just, I'm an alcoholic. Now it's more of, if it comes up and I talk about it, then I talk about it. But it's just part of my life. Just like my depression or my anxiety or my PTSD. It's something that I used to say that I deal with it. I don't deal with it anymore. I work with it.
Oh, that's good.
And it becomes different because then I can do things like delayed gratification. I'm not feeling good right now. Okay, I'm gonna give it a half hour. Maybe go relax.
Yeah.
Go for a walk or something. Making good decisions, becomes imperative. But without the fifth step, we can't recognize. This is all about removing stock and trade, finding out the causes and conditions, being aware of them, and then in 6 and 7, we're going to ask God to remove them.
My sponsor, and I get it now. It took me years listening to him say this before it actually sunk in. You ever have stuff like that? It's just, you got to hear it a million times before you actually, buy into it, right?
Yeah.
But he used to tell me, he goes, you know what, Monty? My greatest defect has now become my greatest asset. And I'm like, what, are you nuts?
Yeah.
But I totally get it. You know what's cool about every step? Every step has promises to them.
Yes, they do.
We have a tendency to focus on the 9th step promises. They're on the wall. Sometimes I wish people would, if they're going to hang them on the wall, please put these are the 9th step promises.
Yeah. Or put the 3rd step promises up also to give a little bit of hope.
Put them all up there.
Yeah.
But so I was looking at this before the show and I was like, this is so powerful. It says, once we have taken this step 5, withholding nothing, and here's the first promise, we are delighted. Wow, how many years did it take before I was delighted about anything? Then the next one is, we can look the world in the eye.
Yeah.
Here's another one. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease.
Yeah.
I couldn't be alone without a six-pack next to my chair, man.
Yeah.
There was no way. Our fears fall from us. What? We begin
That's the one I love.
Is that the one you love?
Like
yeah.
Fear is the basis of almost every resentment.
Yes. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience.
Yep.
The feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. Say that in a meeting and see how controversial it gets. The drink problem is gone.
Yeah.
What? You can't say that.
Try being a recovered alcoholic.
Oh, yeah, there's that one, right? And then it says, we feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Those are amazing promises.
I had a friend, and I thought this was a great idea, but what he said was if you take the promises and turn the pronouns to I and me,
Yeah, make them your own.
yeah,
Yeah.
then what you're doing is you're almost asking yourself questions in a sense, or you're stating that you're doing it, because I think the promises are a guide. They tell you where you're at. Is this happening for you?
Oh,
Great.
that's really
Then you're on the
good.
right path.
That's really, really good, Dion. That's really excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, I sold that immediately.
Yes, you can say, okay, am I delighted? Can I look the world in the eye? No, can't do that. All right. Well, maybe I'm not being thorough with this step.
Mhm.
Can I be at perfect peace and ease by myself? Wow, that is really a good
It
suggestion.
becomes more powerful.
Right.
It does, because then, well, it feels more like, I don't want to say the word control because it's not control, but empowering. That's what I was looking for. It's very empowering, saying, "Hey, I've come from the heap of life,
Yeah.
and now this is happening to me."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's happening.
Yeah.
Better believe it.
You know, I did something that was real controversial a while back. I had a banner made, and it's in the office part of the Take 12 Radio studios, of the 12 steps and the related biblical scriptures that go with each step. But you know how in the beginning of the steps that they all say we, and we make an emphasis that it's a we program. We do this thing, as a fellowship, and I think that is vitally important. And I think we a lot of this thing is about unity and having each other's back and that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
But I found that early on in my recovery, I was so focused on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I needed to turn those steps and do exactly what you said. I admitted I was powerless over my addictions or my alcoholism. And so I took the we out and I put I, and this was just for my own personal growth.
Nothing wrong with it.
And I stuck it on the wall, and I've had people that come in and they go, how come that doesn't say we? I go, you know why? Because my tendency is to look at the we and keep myself out of it. So just for my own application, I put I, which kind of speaks to what you were talking about personalizing this.
Well, and you should personalize it, because this is your recovery. Monty's recovery path is different than mine, but it still works. We can still agree on the same things, but you're going to have different experiences. Your life's going to be different than mine.
Sure.
But we can all agree on the same things. But it's a very personal thing. And the whole point is creating a relationship with God, which is the most personal thing in the world to me.
Absolutely.
So, this program's all about you. Right?
Yeah.
But you can't keep it unless you give it away.
And you can't give away what you don't have.
That's right. You got to go get it.
That's why, and I don't know what you think about this, but I'd say I know people that tell people that are on their third step, okay, it's time for you to sponsor somebody, and I go, whoa, wait a minute.
What?
No. It's like, as long as you're a step ahead of them, and I'm like, wait a minute. I truly believe unless you've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, it's not time for you to sponsor yet.
No, it's not. And you don't sponsor until you've completed the steps.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that. It's like if I go to aviation school, right? And the teacher has read the ground school instructions, but they've never flown the plane.
As long as he's a chapter ahead,
Yeah, yeehaw.
You can't. Here's the thing. I know you want to help, but you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
The maintenance steps mean something.
Yeah.
It does. And I'm going to tell you why this is happening, because we don't have that many sponsors. Because well, here's the thing is, we used to say, if you are looking for a sponsor, please raise your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Now we say, if you're willing to be a sponsor, okay,
Yeah.
I know. I have a sponsee who's, he's like, this guy wants me to sponsor. I'm like, you're not done with the steps yet. You're not even being consistent with me.
Right.
And
So if
I
you
said,
haven't
you could be a closed mouth friend, but not a sponsor.
if you haven't done step 9, for instance, and you're on step 5, and your sponsee says, "Hey, I want to go make amends right away to this guy," you don't have the experience of what making amends too quickly looks like.
Yeah.
You don't know what to tell him.
Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. You're probably not going to bring up a living amends because you don't know about it yet.
You don't know about it yet. And the other thing is, we used to make the approach, right? We made the approach. We didn't wait for some poor sap to come to you. We made the.
Nope.
But you know what?
I don't wait.
I think part of the problem is, and I want to be careful. There's a lot of great treatment centers out there that do an excellent job of working with people with life controlling issues. But darn it, the rooms, the 12-step rooms, have become flooded with people who have been recommended to attend them.
Yep.
That are not they're not the alcoholic of the hopeless variety. They're not the drug addict of the hopeless variety. They may be a drug abuser. They may be an alcohol abuser.
Yeah.
But they don't even know the difference. It hasn't been taught to them. And you know what? I'm glad that the rooms we have open meetings and the rooms are open up to people, because anybody can come in and apply the principles of the 12 steps and have a better life.
Oh yeah, I've seen it happen.
It's a wonderful thing. But doggone it, if you don't understand powerlessness, you shouldn't be teaching how to get a power. You know what I mean?
And that well, and there's a whole new set of things. Back in the 90s, if you wanted to be a drug and alcohol counselor, you had to be sober at least 1 year.
Right.
Period. And now we have, unfortunately, there's this new wave of recovery coaching and sober living. Sober living is sober living. If you want to continue living there, you are required to have a sponsor. But then they put them all in a bus and take them to one meeting, and they're all supposed to find a sponsor. The numbers don't fit.
Right.
And that's not it's not conducive to long-term recovery.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You're trying to force something and it won't work. God just won't allow it. Not with the way the traditions are set up. And you will fail every single time, which leads to body brokering.
Well, what we used to do, we used to go to the treatment facilities.
Yeah.
They didn't come to us. We went to them.
That's right.
Right? We don't do that anymore. Hardly
Nope.
at all. I don't know too many people that do that. H&I, hospitals and institutions, I'm sure it is alive. I don't know how well it is, so I can't say alive and well.
They have Bridge the Gap now. AA has Bridge the Gap. And it's a good program, but it shouldn't be needed if we did it the right way.
Yeah. And so what I think is happening is we get a lot of people in the rooms that actually are applying and implementing these 12 spiritual disciplines, because that's what they are, but they may not be powerless. They may, you know what I mean? I mean, if I can put the drink down or the drug down because I have a good enough reason and I don't need a power greater than myself, then I'm probably not an alcoholic. I'm probably not an addict. And,
probably not.
And that's great news. I mean, because this is a lot of work, right? But you probably shouldn't be sponsoring people, because what happens is you teach them because it worked for you just to do steps 1, 2, and 3, and you didn't have to do any other ones. You're teaching them that that's all they have to do, and then they go out and get drunk or they get high and they crash and burn, and then you get mad at them because they relapsed.
Yeah.
But you were teaching them. You don't have to do a confession step. You don't have to do step 5. I didn't do step 5, and I'm doing just fine. Well, you're not a drunk, dude. You're not
of the
hopeless variety.
The hopeless variety isn't talked about very much anymore. If I go to a meeting now and say I'm a page 21 drunk, people look at me weird.
Yeah, and Bill W. always there's different, like, just like cancer, there's different phases. I'm in phase 5
Yeah.
cancer. That's the worst. I'm in phase 3. It's the same thing with alcoholism. And Bill is always in the big book. He is always referring to the worst of the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the ones he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, and they say in the, I think it's in their solution or one of the forwards, that we had to raise the bar so we could reach the rest of them.
Yeah.
Okay. When we talk of a hopeless, when I sobered up the first time, I was 18 and I was living on Skid Row. And I went into a place called the Phoenix Concept. It was a place for halfway alcoholics. We were not hopeless variety walking in there. Good example. We had a guy come in, and it was probably a month before he could remember his name. He was bad. We had to bathe him, make sure he ate, everything else. Turns out he wasn't homeless. He was rich. He owned like 4 bars in town.
Oh, wow.
And we implored him to stay anyway. Because we're like, obviously you're of the hopeless variety. You ended up here with us. This is the last block in the house.
Mm-hmm.
He said, no, thank you. Here's $1,000. Thanks for your time. And 2 weeks later, they found him in Las Vegas, and he'd asphyxiated from drinking.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. Hopeless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I go after. Those are the people. And that's the thing, is God has taught me to be like, that person over there needs my help.
Yes.
He talks to me and tells me that. Dion, you need to go over there and talk to that person. And I don't question it. I just go.
See that what you're doing is you're going to these meetings and you're listening to see where you can be of maximum service.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
At a point, my sponsor he had this belly laugh that just would rock the neighborhood when he laughed, right? I said to him one time, I said, Bruce, I'm not getting anything out of these meetings anymore. And he just busted up laughing, and he goes, let me ask you something. He said, have you had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps? Absolutely. I said, do you walk with the creator of the universe by your side? Are you solely dependent on him to help you solve your problem? I go, absolutely. Yeah. I said, have you sponsored people? I said, absolutely. He said, then what are you doing coming here looking to get spiritually fed? It's your job to come here to see where you can be of service to them.
That's right.
And I'm like, oh boy.
I don't go
he shut me down.
Go to meetings for me.
He shut me down, man.
And that reminds me, I was talking to my sponsor, and I was a couple months, and I said, I think I'm just going to go and listen this week. Oh, and he reamed me. He said, Dion, if you go to a meeting and you're planning on not talking, don't go. Don't just stop wasting time. He's like, if you're going to go to a meeting, you share your experience, strength, and hope for 3 minutes, and then shut up. And that's what I did.
Yeah. You don't talk about how you can't fix your broken toaster. You know, you share the message, and absolutely, and we need more of that. Otherwise, you're just taking up space. And,
that's it.
Yeah, and because if people don't know what they don't know, and if you're not, you're right. We do have. I heard it. I don't know how accurate this is, but I heard somebody that I respect a lot say that over 60% of meeting attenders do not have sponsors.
Probably about right.
That sounds about right.
It does.
That's
I can tell when
good.
Somebody doesn't have a sponsor. They're easy to pick out because they're lost. They're always lost.
Yeah. And so, I think, and I also think that with this whole world now, and this better than anybody, dealing, being in therapy and so forth.
Sure.
We have a world today, it's always been there, but it's blatant now, where we're dealing with co-occurring mental health issues. We're dealing with traumatic events in people's lives like never before, right? And we're dealing with people that need hope and recovery like never before. And so those of us who have had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, those of us who have some experience in this thing, if we're not stepping up, it's on us. We got to.
That's exactly it.
We got to step up, man.
We do.
What are you doing in a 12-step meeting and not sponsoring anybody?
Turn. It's our turn to take over and do this the right way. And if we don't do it, then it's not going to be here for the next people. And I do actually have a little bit of a fear that AA may fade away. It's not, when I went to AA in the 90s, you could go to a meeting at 2:00 in the morning. It was standing room only.
Yeah.
That's how AA was. Now I go to a new meeting and 4 people show up.
Yeah. I don't know. The pendulum swings sometimes. I hope you're wrong.
I hope I am too.
I hope you're wrong.
I want to be wrong.
I've noticed in my travels that if you go to Akron AA and you look at New York AA, it's like 2 different programs, right? Yeah. And don't get me started on New York, but the more you move from the East Coast towards the West Coast, the more it gets watered down, the less emphasis on being accountable, the less emphasis on actually doing the steps in order. There's more emphasis on meeting attendance than there is a relationship with a power greater than you.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
And to the point where, if people are meeting dependent and not God dependent, and they are powerless, they're in deep weeds. Right?
Well, that's because they're still using their precious group as their higher power, and
that's okay to make a beginning.
Well, and in the beginning it's okay, but in 12 by 12 it says you got to switch. At some point, you got to quit using the group.
The point of the 12 steps is to move on from there.
Yes, that's exactly it. It is to move on from there, to move on with your life. And now that I've been given this, it is my responsibility to go pass it on.
Right.
Period. And if you don't feel that responsibility, get out. I don't want it.
Now, there's people listening to this right now that are probably saying, well, I tried that and it didn't work. And so I like to ask the question that one of my spiritual advisors asks all the time, and that is, okay, have you formed a prayer and meditation discipline? Have you done steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Are you seeking to be a maximum service to people in the meeting? Are you doing so? Come back to me after you've done those things, and then tell me it doesn't work. But if you haven't, then all you're doing is spewing your opinion.
Yeah,
that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the other thing about step 5 that is so powerful is when you have the privilege of hearing somebody's 5th step.
Yep.
Doesn't that blow your mind? Isn't that amazing?
It is different, and it's neat to see. What's neat is to see them start to discover that it isn't neat to see how to discover how they were wrong, but it's neat to just see that they can discover that they can do something about it, and that gives them hope. I love working with sponsees. It's a bright spot of my life. That's how if you're like, I'm going through the steps again. I'm always going through the steps. I have sponsees.
Well, if you're living in steps 10, 11, and 12, you don't really need to do the formal thing. You're doing it. You're in it all the time.
You're living in the principles.
Right.
And you're practicing these principles in all your affairs. And that's the achievement. That's where you want to get to. That's where serenity is. That's where a balanced life is. Right?
Amen.
That stuff's not going to start happening until you start sponsoring other people. You can't sponsor other people till you do the steps. So do the steps.
Yes. What are you doing in a 12-step program if you're not willing to do the 12 steps, you knucklehead?
Hey, you knuckle. What you doing there, you knucklehead? A quick thing before we wrap up is step 13 usually used to mean that you died sober. So I'd like to let people know. I kind of like.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. What it used to mean.
Hey, can I give a shameful plug?
You do it.
Okay.
Plug away.
So for Dion's listeners, Dion is we have included him in our Recovery Podcast Network, and so we have no intentions of putting 1 million podcasters on there. We've kind of handpicked a few that we really believe are, really have a servant's heart. And so Dion, you're definitely one of those guys, and your heart for recovery and your heart for people, it shines through. It is obvious, and you're real and authentic. And so if you go to take12radio.com and click on the big purple banner that says Recovery Podcast Network, you'll see Dion's podcast as well as others as well. But please visit our website. You can join there, subscribe for fun and for free on all the major podcasting platforms listed there. We got workshops, we got recovery music, and we got great guests like Dion. It's been a privilege to be on your show, buddy.
It's been a lot of fun talking with you, and I'm looking forward to a lot more stuff in the future.
Me too.
I'm going to do another shameful plug here. Go and join Monty's TikTok, please. He needs to go live.
Yeah, we need 1,000 followers to go live, and it's simply tiktok.com/@ the little @ button, Take 12 Radio. That's using
there we go. See if we can get you
12.
some TikTokers.
Yeah.
We're old men. We're trying to TikTok,
we are.
but give us a chance, man. Give us a chance.
Amen.
Oh, wow. Oh, and of course, my listeners, thank you so much. I've been podcasting for a few years now, and I find that things happen in God's time, and that when things are natural and organic, it just turns out the way that it's supposed to. So I always try and bring you more and more information from more and more different views, and that's where my talent lies in. So what I do is I bring other people in that have those other talents. To recap on step 5, its real purpose is to fit yourself to be a maximum service to God and those people around you. So do some digging. Take a look at yourself. It's not that scary. It isn't. You'll actually find some things in there that you might actually like also. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. I love you. Peace out. And have a day.
All right, there you have it. It was an absolute honor to be on Dion's podcast. I recommend that you visit his website at trudgingtogether.com and then click on the podcast link at the top of the page to access all of his interviews and podcasts as well. All right, until our next broadcast, this is the Monty'man along with the rest of the Take 12 Recovery Radio family, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.